Hi, welcome to today's lower back rescue. So we're going to have a look at loosening up the lower back today, but also all of the surrounding areas and the supporting areas of the body that look after the lower back. So a little bit of work on the core, also opening up and loosening up the hips. So the piriformis muscle in the hips often creates lower back tension, and a little bit of opening up the legs as well. So we'll give a good kind of overall look at supporting the lower back area. Props that you'll need today: a cushion, a block and a blanket. So grabbing hold of one of each of those. And then coming to start lying down on your back. So what I would suggest if you're experiencing lower back discomfort at the moment is to have your cushion underneath your knees and probably your blanket underneath your head. So you don't have to have these, but it's just a nice option for looking after the lower back. Same goes with when you're sleeping at night. You'll want to have either a pillow underneath the knees if you're on your back, or in between the knees if you're on your side. So having those kind of things available for you when you go to sleep if you're experiencing lower back discomfort will really help. So lowering down, using your hands and your forearms to lower down and getting yourself cozy, opening up the palms, allowing your eyes to close. So taking a few minutes at the beginning of class to maybe allow your body to settle down into the mat. So a little kind of shake side to side on the hips, maybe a little turn of the head side to side. And if there's any discomfort at all, if you're not feeling good in this position, then feel free to bend the knees, bring the feet flat to the floor. Instead, you can take the feet to the outside edges of the mat and let the knees knock together. So it might be that that's a more comfortable position for you. It allows the lower back to rest on the floor. So if that is more comfortable, then come into this position instead. So checking in with your lower back today. How's it been feeling today? How's it been feeling this week? Noticing if there are sensations that you can feel right now. And noticing what comes up for you emotionally and mentally with regards to your lower back. Is this an ongoing problem? Is it something that often feels uncomfortable? Connecting into the feelings that surround discomfort or tightness in this part of your body. And seeing if you're holding on anywhere, if there's any tension in your hips, in your lower back. Seeing if you can allow the body to kind of spread out and melt into the ground a little bit. And noticing where your breath is traveling in and out of your body as well. So noticing if the breath is able to kind of access deeper into the lower ribs, the lower lungs, or whether it feels quite stuck at the top of the chest. Often if we're in discomfort, the breath also gets affected. So maybe seeing how it might feel to begin to draw your breath as you inhale to the side ribs, the lower ribs, the back of the body. So you can even bring your palms of your hands to the outside of the ribs. See if as you inhale, if you can kind of move the lower ribs outwards a little bit into the palm of the hands. So it's a very subtle movement, but a feeling of expansion going out to the sides. Taking a few more breaths here in whatever way feels good. Maybe the breaths can last a little longer now. Maybe there's a bit more space in the body. Maybe a few things have relaxed in this opening pose. On your next inhale, allowing your eyes to open and bending the knees, bringing the feet flat to the floor. You can move your cushion out to the side. And then bringing the feet to hips width apart. So you should just about be able to touch the back of the ankles with your fingertips. Check that the feet are parallel, that they're not pointing out to the sides. You can have a little glance down, check they're parallel. And then lifting the right foot from the ground, opening up the right knee and bringing right ankle onto left thigh. So starting today by opening up in the hips, and it might be that once you get here that you already notice that this feels quite intense. Maybe that right knee is already kind of drawing towards the body. And so actually just a little gentle opening with that right hand is all it needs. If it feels that the knee's comfortably very open here, then you can absolutely lift the left foot from the floor and interlace fingers around either the back of the thigh, so trying that one first, or maybe around the shins. So whichever one you're doing, you're not lifting the head from the ground, you're keeping everything open and broad in the chest. So if the shoulders start to come in, if the head starts to lift, then come a step backwards so that you're able to stay open in your upper body. And this might be different on both sides. It might be that normally you're able to, hold on in a certain place, and today you're thinking, God, that feels like too much. If it feels like too much at any point today, then please back out and take what your body needs. Looking after your lower back, that's the whole point of this class. So be really mindful today of not pushing it. Be really mindful of listening in. So wherever you are, hopefully by now you're feeling a stretch in that right hip. And if for any reason you're not and you're very open in this particular pose, then you can always move that right foot further down the thigh towards your body. So this can be a pretty intense stretch. And staying with that breath, so those nice deep inhales and exhales. Almost imagining that every exhale creates a little bit more space, that the muscle fibers are able to move a little bit away from each other and move around a little bit more freely. Taking a couple more breaths here, still working on having that knee opening up towards the outside, away from the body. And then on your next inhale, releasing the fingers if you did lift the foot from the floor, lowering the foot back down, and then really carefully you can use your hands to support that right knee, bringing it back to the ground. And from here you might want to either kind of windscreen wiper the legs side to side, or you might want to stretch the legs out long, give them a little shake. So see what you need here, just releasing that hip. And then coming back to center. So same on the other side, bringing the feet to parallel, having a little check, and then lifting the left foot from the ground this time, opening up the knee, and the ankle comes onto the thigh. So having a little test in this position, please do sit here just for a little moment, feeling into this. So it might be very different one side to the other. And of course, if you do want to lift that right foot from the floor, if the knees are nice and open here very comfortably, then you can do so and have a little go interlacing behind the thigh or behind the shin. So the aim of these poses is not for them to feel like torture. So if anything's feeling like that or feeling really uncomfortable, then definitely listen in and see if you can kind of ease off a little bit. So this is a process, opening up hips, lower back. It isn't necessarily something that gets released in one yoga session. Sometimes it can really help, but something regular is normally better. So if there are particular poses that are feeling really good for your body, maybe taking note of those so that you're able to do them, in the morning when you wake up or before you go to bed. And of course, you can come back and do this class at any time as well. So seeing if you can find as much space as possible in the left hip. Couple more breaths here. And then as you inhale, releasing the fingers, if you've linked them up, lowering the right foot down, and then guiding that left leg gently back down again. And you can take those windscreen wipers through the legs, or you can give the legs a little shake, take them out straight, whatever feels good. And then rolling over onto one side and using your hand to help you come up to seated. So popping a blanket out of the way and moving into an all fours position. So hands underneath shoulders, knees underneath hips. And allowing your fingers to open comfortably wide, creases of the wrist towards the front of the mat, and gaze down in between the thumbs. Coming through a few cat-cows. This is a really nice releaser if you've got a tight lower back. So just taking these as far as feels good, pressing through the hands, feeling an engagement through the shoulders as you do that. So almost the shoulders kind of round a little bit and dome. And then also before you start, seeing if you can get a sense of the core engaging. So it's almost like the core is kind of wrapping around the sides of the waist, and the center of the core is almost drawing up towards the spine. So seeing if you can keep that feeling as we go through the cat-cows. So as you inhale, allowing the tailbone to rise, but rather than kind of dropping and sinking the belly, keeping a bit of engagement through the core, and then lifting and opening through the chest. As you exhale, pressing through the hands, rolling through the spine, tucking the tailbone, and really lifting the core upwards and wrapping it around the sides of the waist. Coming back through one more time. So inhaling, keeping that engagement in the core, opening, expanding through the chest. And then exhaling, really engaging again, lifting the core up, wrapping round, pressing through hands. And inhaling back to center. From here, going into plank. So if you know that you're okay in a full plank, stepping back into full plank. Otherwise, of course, you can keep the knees down if you're not at a point where full plank feels okay. But give the full plank a go if you can, and seeing if you can keep that same engagement through the core that we were trying with cat and cow. So that feeling of the sides of the waist wrapping around and the belly button kind of drawing up towards the spine. One more breath here, pressing through the hands, reaching through the heels, and then lifting the hips up and back, downward facing dog. So in downward dog, what you might find is taking a bend in the knees first allows the spine to become long. So today's all about the lower back, so don't worry about the legs being straight. What you can do if you want to is take a pedal with the feet, or you can stay with the knees bent. So if that feels good with the knees bent, keeping the spine long, then feel free to do so. As you inhale, coming up onto the toes to create a little bit of space, stepping forward with that right foot in between the hands. So you might want a couple of steps to help you get there if you're particularly tight, or you might find you can step in one go and come forward. So don't worry if it takes a couple of steps, that's okay. Keeping that back knee lifted. Left hand comes down to the ground underneath the left shoulder. If it can't comfortably come to the ground, then grab your block, pop it underneath the left hand instead. That'll give you a little bit more height. So up to you on that one. As you inhale, twisting through the waist to the right and lifting the right hand up, fingertips reaching towards the sky. And the gaze also comes up to the sky or to the side if that feels more comfortable. So opening up through the spine here, coming through these little twists. Exhaling, bringing the hand down. And then stepping the foot back into plank. Option to either stay here in plank, or if you'd like to, taking a breath, rolling onto the outside edge of the left foot and stacking the right foot on top, keeping both hands on the ground. So we're kind of doing a side plank twist. Hips lifting up towards the sky, and then back into plank, and lowering the knees down, have a little break, coming through a cat-cow. So as we did before, keeping that engagement through the core, and coming through at your own pace. Finding your way back to center, tucking the toes under, and lifting the hips to downward facing dog. So taking that bend through the knees again, if that feels good. Really seeing if you can keep a lot of length in the lower back. So you may find if your legs are quite tight, that as you straighten the legs, you might get a rounding in the lower back. So if that's happening, keep the knees bent. On your next inhale, up onto both toes, stepping forward with the left foot in between the hands. And then that right hand stays underneath the right shoulder. You can pop it on a block for a bit of extra height if you'd like. And inhale, reaching up with the left hand. So coming into the twist on this side here. Exhaling, hand comes back down. And stepping back to plank, we'll do the same on this side. So you can either come into your full plank, of course you can bring these down at any time, or if you'd like to, you can roll onto the little toe edge of the right foot, stack the left foot on top, gaze and twist over to the left. So both hands stay down in this little kind of side twist. Lifting up with the hips, and then rolling back into your full plank, knees come down, and taking those cat and cows once more. So inhale, coming into your cow, and exhaling into cat. Inhaling, finding your way back to center, and now taking some nice big circles through the hips in any way that feels good, releasing everything off. Pausing at any place that you feel you want to pause. And then one more time, tucking toes under, lifting hips, downward facing dog. On your next inhale, really slowly walking the feet forwards to meet the hands at the top of the mat. And coming into a forward fold, taking one arm inside the elbow, other arm inside the elbow, and seeing if you can release and relax the upper body. So you can take a bend in the knees here if you want, that's absolutely okay. So gaze is towards the back of the mat. And then if you haven't taken a bend in the knees, bending the knees now, allowing the arms to release. And keeping the knees bent, we're going to roll up to stand, seeing if you can engage the core as you come up. So really engaging and getting that feeling of wrapping and drawing in around the core, coming up to stand, pressing through the legs, and all the way up. Once you get to the top in mountain pose, checking that the feet are still parallel, so sometimes they like to sneak out. If the toes have snuck out, bringing the feet to parallel. Grounding down through the feet, so seeing if you can find the base of the big toe, the base of the little toe and the heel. And seeing if you can ground down fairly evenly around those 3 points. As you ground down through those 3 points, seeing if you can get a sense of lifting, especially through the front of the thighs. And when you get to the pelvis, seeing if the upper body can almost lift up a little bit out of the pelvis. So as you start to draw the spine long, tuck your lower ribs in just slightly. And as you do that, you'll notice that there's a little bit of length that you find in your lower back. So often when we're talking about lengthening the lower back, people say to tuck the tailbone. That can be really helpful. It just depends on what the tilt is of your pelvis naturally. So if you've already got a posterior tilt where the pelvis is like this, then actually tucking your tailbone is going to make that feel much worse. So allowing your hips to be as they are, getting a feeling of drawing up and out of them, and then tucking the lower ribs in. Finding a bit of broadness through the chest, keeping that tuck of the lower ribs. Opening the arms to the side, palms facing forward. And then imagine that someone's got a piece of string out of the top of the crown of your head and they're lifting up through there. As you do that, you get a feeling of the back of the neck lengthening. And maybe as the back of the neck lengthens, your chin ever so slightly has a small tuck. And take a couple of breaths here. Notice how it feels to stand in this position. Is this different to normal? And if it is, does it feel good? Does it feel longer, more spacious, more open? Does it feel a bit strange? It's absolutely okay if it does feel a bit strange. So taking a moment in this kind of neutral alignment and noticing how your body got to this place. This is something that you can always come back to at any point in your day. So it doesn't have to be palms out to the side. You could have the hands down by the sides and palms facing in if you're at work or something like that and you want to look a bit more natural. So getting a feel for what this position is like in your body. Taking one more breath here. And while you're in this place, still drawing the breath into the lower ribs, into the back of the body, like what we talked about right at the beginning of class. On your next inhale, taking a step back down your mat. Going to have toes out and heels in. So the feet are wider than hips width, but not insanely wide. Make sure you can be comfortable. And then taking a bend down through the knees, bringing the hands onto the thighs. So you can either have the thumbs in or the hands the other way. Thumbs towards the front tends to be more comfortable. And as you do that with your hands on the thighs, see if you can kind of ease the knees to open a little bit. So the knees are kind of opening towards the little toe edges of the feet. So if you notice the knees are coming in and crowding in, seeing if you can allow them to open a little bit. And then coming into a little twist from here, seeing if you can keep the spine long. Right shoulder draws forward as you twist and begin to look over the left shoulder. Both hips are still reaching towards the back. So if that right hip's sneaking forward, bring it back a little bit. Inhaling forward, and then exhaling, left shoulder comes forward, and then gazing over the right. Keeping the knees moving outwards, keeping the hips moving backwards, and the spine and the chest nice and long and open. Tucking of the lower ribs if you feel your spine kind of wanting to round. Engaging through the belly, wrapping the abdominals around the waist. Inhale forward, we'll come through once more. So right shoulder forward, gaze over the left. Engaging through the abdominals. So you're still breathing comfortably into the sides of the ribs. And the abdominals are wrapping around the back. Inhale forward. Exhaling, left shoulder forward, you're nearly there. Gaze over the right shoulder. Inhaling to center, straightening the legs, and then having a little kind of wiggle of the legs, loosening everything up. And then bringing yourself back to stand at the front of the mat. So option here to try a little balance. And the reason that we do a little bit of balancing with lower back work is because it builds strength in the core and helps with that engagement of that feeling of bringing the abdominals in, wrapping around, and also that tucking of the lower ribs, which stops the lower back wanting to round and splay in. So grounding down through both feet, finding those 3 points of support. And then bringing the weight particularly into the right foot this time. Hands coming to prayer. So bringing them in front of your heart and the palms together. As the weight's in the right foot, you're going to see about lifting the left foot from the ground and taking it behind the body. So staying with the toes down first of all. So we're going to have a little play at coming into Warrior 3. So in Warrior 3, the toes don't need to come miles off the ground, especially if you're new to this practice. You can hover them just a little bit. So it's almost like your body's on a seesaw. So as the leg lifts, the body's going to move forward just slightly. So it's kind of an even amount. So the body's not moving forward more than the leg's lifting. So if the leg and the toes lift a tiny bit, the body comes forward a tiny bit. And if you feel comfortable to try and lift the leg a little higher, you're flexing through that back foot, so kicking back with the heel, then the body will come forward more. So don't worry if you wobble here, don't worry if you fall over. Wherever you are having a little go, you can do some hovers and lowers. The hips are staying level, almost like there are two headlights on the hips, and they're shining forwards. And then from here, seeing if you can step back into a lunge. So you're going to bring that left foot back, bending through the front knee, and landing in a lunge. So if that didn't work out and you had a wobble, don't worry about it. So once you're in low lunge, we're going to take a couple of little bounces here, opening up the front of that hip. So sometimes the front of the hips being tight can also affect the lower back. And then allowing the hips to sink and stay for just a second. From here, using the back toes to help you come back to stand. So pressing into the feet and back to stand. Little shake out of the legs. So again, if that did feel a bit wobbly, don't even worry about it. This is all about building strength. So, you know, Warrior 3 is a tricky one. It uses the lower back, it uses the core, it uses the legs. And these are all areas that might be feeling quite tight. So let's come on to the other side. You'll probably have one side that you feel more balanced on than the other, and it'll probably link up with where you're tight in your lower back. So grounding down now through those 3 points on the left foot, finding something to focus on, hands coming to prayer. And again, it's that feeling of hinging. So if you're lifting just the toes a little bit, then the body just comes forward a little bit. So bringing that right foot back, coming up onto the toes. And by all means, if you're feeling comfortable, come straight into it. What you can also do is begin to come forward a little bit, hover the toes, and then bring them back down. And you can kind of just do these little pulses. So don't feel like you have to go the whole way. Kicking back with the heel if you decide to lift for any significant distance. Staying with pulses if that feels better. And of course you can have a go at lifting the leg higher only if you want, or stay with little pulses. Headlights of the hips shining forward. One more breath. And then stepping back into your high lunge if you can. And once you get there, you can do little pulses here. So see if you can keep the shoulders over the hips. If you notice you're leaning forward, bring the body back a little bit. And stay with that tucking of the lower ribs so it protects the lower back. You can scoot that foot back a little further if you want to come a bit deeper. Finding stillness for one breath. And then pressing off those back toes, coming back to stand, little shake of the legs. From here, we're finding our way down. So bending the knees and coming down to sit. So you might want to bring the hands in front and then bring in hands behind. So I'll turn to face you to make this a little easier. Bringing the feet to the ground about hips width apart. And you're going to lift up the right foot from the ground, tuck it underneath the left leg, and then bring your legs so that the knees facing forward and the foot is behind, so that left foot's still on the ground. Any pain in your knees here, then do feel free to come out straight away. If that's feeling okay, then you're going to bring that left leg across and pop the foot down if you can, outside of the right leg. So I'll give you an alternative in a minute if for any reason this isn't feeling good. Once you get there, holding on to the left knee with your right hand. And then you can take a little twist if you want behind the body. So the left hand comes behind the body and then opening up to the left. So taking the twist through the waist, both hips are staying grounded down and coming into a little twist. So that's your option if that's feeling good on the knees. If that's not feeling good on the knees, then you're going to bring the right foot out in front instead of tucking it underneath. Left foot stays bent, hips width apart, and then coming into that same twist, so holding onto the knee. So go with what feels good here. If you're getting any discomfort in that right knee, then that's the one to go for. So one more breath wherever you are. This doesn't have to be a massive twist. You can stay kind of looking just slightly to the left, but still fairly forwards if you want. Or as you exhale, you can take it a little further. And then inhaling back to center, gently picking up that left leg, bringing the left foot down. And then I would lean back on the hands just to allow a little bit of space for that right leg to come out. You might want to bring both hands behind the body so you can give a little shake at the legs before we come over to the other side. And the legs draw back in again. So if that wasn't comfortable on the knees last time, then you'll take your variation on this side too. And that'll be straightening out the left leg and then twisting, holding on to the right. If it felt okay, you're bringing that left foot underneath the right leg and lowering the leg down to the ground. And then that right foot comes to the outside of the left thigh. You're always welcome to stay here if you don't want to take the twist. If you're taking the twist, then you're holding on to that left knee, the right knee with the left hand, and then right hand comes behind the body. See if you can get that opening coming through the waist. And again, you don't have to take the twist very far. So twists are really, really good for spinal health. There are little joints in the spine as there are with all of the other places on the body, so every vertebrae has a little joint. So taking the spine through its range of movement in these twists is a great way to allow the synovial fluid to move around and to keep the spine nice and healthy, nice and mobile. And you've probably noticed if you're taking this twist here with the legs over each other, this is called half Lord of the Fishes, that you're also getting a little opening through the right hip as well. So it's a little 2-for-1 in this twist. On your next inhale, finding your way back to center, bringing that right foot back to its normal position, leaning back on the hands and allowing that left leg to come out. A little shake of the legs. From here, scooting to about halfway up your mat, coming down onto your back, making sure your block is handy here. So lowering all the way down. And then as we did at the beginning, checking that the feet are parallel, bringing the feet to hips width and parallel. And seeing if you can just about touch the backs of your ankles with the tips of your toes. So you should just be able to tickle the backs of the ankles. And then from here, coming into a bridge pose. So what I recommend today is to take a supported bridge to allow the lower back to open and without having to kind of put in any work. But if you do want to take an active bridge and that feels better, then you are welcome. But we'll talk through the supported bridge for today. So pressing through the hands to lift the hips up, grounding down through the feet, and then your block is coming either widthways or lengthways, depending on how open your spine is, underneath the hips. So you'll kind of find the place where it feels comfortable. So have a little play around. If you put it somewhere and it feels hideously uncomfortable, move it a little bit forward, backwards, up, down. And then allowing everything to kind of rest down and sink in. So this just allows the spine to be supported here while you're getting a little bit of opening. As I said, you may find if you're very, very open in your back that you can have your block lengthways. Now for most people this is going to feel way intense and like too much. So I'd suggest going the other way around the majority of the time. So having a little go in the supported one first, we'll come through a second time around. So if you do want to take an active one, then you can on that one. And you might want to open up the arms into a kind of cactus shape so that the chest can open up as well. Taking a couple of breaths here. If you're happy to stay in your supported bridge, staying in your supported bridge. If you know that a more active bridge is what might be feeling better for you today, you can have a little go at removing that block. And then lowering the hips down first of all really gently, then pressing through the hands, inhaling, lifting the hips, and seeing how it feels to lift the hips up into a bridge without the block. So if you're in an active bridge, then you're kind of imagining that you're holding something between the knees, something very, very breakable. So you don't want to push the knees all the way together and break it, but equally, if you relax too much, you'll end up dropping it. So holding that precious something in between the knees. And then you're lifting up through the hips, so the hips are reaching up. So this is a much stronger version of this pose, and if your lower back's feeling very uncomfortable, it might just be that this doesn't feel good. So if you're more comfortable with the block, then I'd suggest just staying with the block for this one, but if for any reason you want to take the active one, that's how you do it. Otherwise, a couple more breaths with the block underneath. And then removing the block when you're ready by lifting the hips, pressing down through the feet. And lowering down the spine, one vertebrae at a time, nice and slow. Moving the block to the side, and then taking some windscreen wipers through the legs. So exhaling, the knees come down, inhaling up. Exhaling down, and inhaling up. When your knees next come over to the right hand side, allowing them to stay there. And then opening up the left arm to the side, gaze comes over the left arm, so having a little spinal twist. And you put your cushion and your blanket there, so if for any reason it doesn't feel comfortable for the legs to come all the way over, you can always pop your cushion underneath the legs if you prefer. Inhaling, head comes back to center and knees to center. Exhaling to the other side, maybe the right arm opens up this time, gaze over the right arm, and again use your cushions if you need to underneath the knees if that feels better. So taking a couple more breaths here. So all of these postures, all of these movements today are to help increase range of movement through the spine and also to increase the strength that supports the lower back. So that's why we do all that work on the core, on the balancing, things like the plank poses. Inhaling, head comes back to center and knees to center. And then coming into Shavasana. So again, however you started, maybe you want to have a cushion under the knees, open the legs out. Maybe you like a cushion or a blanket underneath the head. Then you can allow the knees to knot together. So this is completely personal preference here. Allowing your eyes to close when you get there. And having a little feel into your body now. So does it feel any different to how it felt at the start of class? And how did all those postures and poses feel? Maybe there were some that felt, you felt very open in. Maybe there were some that felt quite challenging, or places where you felt tight that you didn't even know were feeling tight. Lower back is a complicated area of the body in terms of how we experience discomfort and what is necessarily causing the discomfort in that area. So it's really important to have a wraparound approach and work in all of the different areas that surround and support the lower back. I really encourage you, anything that felt particularly good today, to go back. You can do these for a bit longer. You can do them for, 3-4 minutes at a time if that feels good. That gets into the connective tissue and the fascia, the longer holds. As always, listening into your body if you're doing that, not taking it too far. Allowing the hips and the lower back to melt down into the mat at the moment. Finding that little bit of space. Thank you for joining me today for this lower back rescue. Do feel free to stay a bit longer if this is feeling comfortable for your lower back, or if there's a position that you feel you'd be more comfortable in, then you can move to that to finish your Shavasana if you prefer. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Namaste.